y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, I have a cramp in my leg. Oh my god, I'm gonna die. Oh my god. Anyway, hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do all things spooky. We tell stories, we talk about scary books, scary movies, folklore. It is a fun time, and if that sounds cool to you, I would love to have you here. I post daily, so you get content literally every day with me. Please check out the description below for where to send in your stories, podcast episode links, and social media links as well for me. And yeah, let's get on into these stories. I don't like rambling at the beginning, but I have to say that because there might be new people. So to start off this story, we are going to read a story from one of my friends on TikTok named Dustin. He sent me a few more that I also need to read. I love reading his stuff. He is such a good writer, and he has some pretty scary stuff that happened to him. So let's get into it, shall we? Morgan, I swear to you this really happened. It all started when I got off from work after a long, exhausting shift. All I wanted to do was crash, but instead I pulled into Jesse's driveway. Before I could even knock, Justin swings open that door, grinning like an idiot. "Let's go on an adventure," he said. I barely had time to put my Diet Coke on the counter before he was shoving his phone in my face. "Wasp," he read. "An abandoned town in the middle of the woods in Tennessee. Frozen in time, never touched, never disturbed. The land was once home to Native Americans before the Park Service bought it out for logging. Some say the spirits got angry, that they wanted revenge." I rolled my eyes, but Jesse was already grabbing his jacket. It wasn't freezing out, but the air had that brittle, sharp bite. We all pile into Justin's Jeep, him driving, me up front, and Jesse sprawled out in the back. We stopped for food, the usual McDonald's run, and then headed into the woods. And that's when things got weird. The second we hit that logging road, my phone lost service. Apple Music cut off, leaving only the faint, eerie hum of a static from the radio. The road turned to gravel, the trees pressed in close, and the headlights caught an old orange sign. "Caution, not a through road." Justin barely slowed down. "Probably just an old sign," he muttered. "The road gets rougher. Potholes, puddles." Jesse said something about the trees looking creepy and how they were too tall, too thin. Then we started seeing them, figures in the tree line. Not people, not animals, just shapes. Dark, shifting, impossible to focus on. I felt them watching. I felt them inside the car. Justin just called it paranoia. Then the GPS said, "Arrive in 35 minutes." We pull over for a piss break, and that's when I really felt it. The cold was different. It wasn't just December cold, it was wicked, like the air itself didn't belong to us, like it didn't want us there. We rush back into the car, and the road gets worse. Justin started muttering about getting stuck and about how we'd be screwed with no service. I closed my eyes for just a second. And then, brakes squealing, Justin cursing. A boulder sat in the middle of the road, not just a rock. A rusted wagon wheel was fused into the stone, like it had melted there. The axle twisted into the dirt. No way that was natural. We backtracked and took a different road. Wolf Creek Falls, 1/4. The GPS. Arrive in 8 minutes. Then, another boulder, a different one, directly placed in our path. We reverse again, trying another way. The GPS. Your destination is on the right. There was nothing. Just trees. No town, no buildings, nothing. We had been following a map to nowhere. That's when I started panicking. We turned around and took another road, Rattlesnake Gap. Justin guns it. We were hitting potholes so hard the Jeep rattled. But then, the boulder. Not in the road this time, on the side, like something had moved it. Justin floored it. We raced downhill through puddles, the windshield splattered with muddy water. And then we saw the gate. The road opened, the trees peeled away, and suddenly we were back on pavement, the main road, civilization. I don't think any of us breathed until we were halfway back to Jesse's. Nobody talked, nobody even joked about what happened. I dropped them off and went home, barely making it through the motions of washing my face and getting into bed. My body felt drained, like something had been taken from me. I let my eyes close. Then, a sound. A low, humming static. Slowly, building. I sat up so fast my head spun. The headlights, bright and blinding, spilling through the window, and beyond them, a clearing. The road. The actual real road. For a second, my breath caught. I wasn't in my bed. I was still in the car, still in the woods. The trees were just now opening up. We'd never left, but now finally we could, I think. Nope. I am never going to sleep again. Thank you very much. All right, next story. I grew up near the Shawnee National Forest and by Ferncliff State Park in Illinois. Now, growing up, my parents were very into the paranormal and did investigations without knowing what they were doing. My grandma lived on her own lot of land on the property, and she and my late grandfather built a little modular home there. On the property sat a garage and an additional trailer that was not livable. We had blackberries growing wild in the back, and we were essentially surrounded by trees. In the lot next to us was a big abandoned house. This house gave off such a bad energy. Our grandkids would never go alone in there at night. We didn't even have to be told. We just felt it and were afraid. I'm going to give you a few experiences that I had throughout my life on this property. The layout of the house was that of a trailer with an add-on. You could see from the back bedroom all the way to the living room, so from one end of the house to the other. My aunt and I both had experienced this. One night while sleeping, we woke up and looked up from the bed to see what time it was. As we rolled over and changed positions, we would glance into the kitchen and see my dead grandfather standing at the counter. As we noticed him, he turned and grinned, a mouthful of sharp teeth. This would not be the first time this entity took on the form of a loved one, especially one that had passed, to terrorize us. It particularly liked to bother me as a child with apparitions of my sister being tortured. My sister passed at the age of 5 when I was 11. She had an incredibly rare disease. My grandfather actually died on the property by electrocution when he was installing something. I never got to meet him. However, I do have some gifts and talents and could see him from a very young age. The real him, not the scary him. The trailer was butted up against the back of the garage so you could walk through one and come out the other. I do not know why this was done, but it gave both buildings a horrid feeling. All of us grandkids hated walking past those buildings. We did not want to turn our backs to it, and if it was at night, we would not go out there, even to the car, to go home alone. Many times I saw the shadow figures in the windows and heard things moving around. Back to the property next to us. My parents had been taking some photos outside at night for their investigating, and as they were going through the photos, I was standing by the computer. I noticed something in a photo that no one else had seen. It was very clearly a Victorian woman with no head holding something in her arms. We guessed either a baby or her head. I was the only one who saw it initially, and I saw her outside by myself. Other scary things included being dragged from my bed by my ankle from the back bedroom and into the hallway, almost to the other side of the house. Growling from nowhere, paintings and pictures on the walls changing and the eyes moving in them. A small demonic-looking figure that had a ring of horns around its head that would crawl around my dad's room. I always felt like the property next to us was looming. It was a dark-colored 4-story Victorian-style home that had fallen into disrepair long before I had come along. I once heard what I thought was my cousin's voice from the property saying, "Come look what I found." I began to follow the voice and set foot on the property and immediately felt sick. I ran off the property, and behind me on the property I heard crying and other noises that I now know were an attempt to get me to go further. We always had nightmares of that house. No one, even the adults, wanted to sleep alone. Doors slammed, cabinets slammed. I later found out as an adult that my father and his friends had made a homemade Ouija board when they were kids on the back of an old mirror. What a mirror? Not a portal on a portal. They used it and not only opened a portal but did not say goodbye. Then they kept trying to dispose of it, and I do not know what happened to it. I have so many stories on just that property and many, many more from my entire life. I'm grateful for the gifts that do allow me to communicate and see the other side. I'm thankful for being able to empathetically read a person upon meeting them, and I'm thankful for the messages I get. But since my grandmother died, I have not returned to that property, nor will I ever. Side note, all of this included hearing voices, being scratched and tugging on hair, just all of your basic physical aggression. The entire air around the house just felt heavy and dark, like how you feel at a funeral of someone you love dearly, combined with utter and complete fear. Due to the things my parents did when I was a child and the fact that I spent most of my childhood on that property and my grandma's, I have many entities that follow. I'm still plagued to this day by some of them, but I'm a practitioner and can keep them at bay pretty well. I managed to protect myself, my pets, and my husband now, and will continue to do so. I also have a wraith following me from the last apartment I lived in. He can be draining, but I managed to keep him outside for the most part. Just this year, I discovered that my great-grandpa was a full-blooded Blackfoot indigenous man. What makes that significant? I'm looking for him and where he's buried because he was buried under a white name. I want to take him home to our land. The craziest part about that is I have dreamed since I was a child of going to and living in Montana and northwards of it, which historically is part of the Blackfoot Nation. I've always connected with horses, which was a very integral part of the Blackfoot Nation. Oh my god. Okay, literally all of that's terrifying. But a Ouija board from a mirror? My brother in Christ? Huh? No. Never do that. For the love of God, if you're listening to this, never, ever do that. Alright, next story. The backstory, I was born and raised in a small town in West Virginia, pretty much smack dab in the heart of Appalachia, in the type of town where you knew all of your neighbors, if you had any. I'm 28 now, but the beginning of this story begins in 2000 when I was 5. My father was working in his tool shed late one night, and my mother asked me to go outside and play while she was cooking supper because I was being a normal, bothersome 4-year-old. My at the time 16-year-old cousin, we'll call her Angie, was sleeping over that night, so she joined me outside to keep an eye on me. Well, Angie came up with the idea to go play hide and seek, and she counted down, and I ran off to hide in the woods that surrounded our home. As I ran away from her to hide, her voice seemed to drown itself out until eventually I couldn't hear it anymore. I ran for what seemed like forever before I came to a spot where the brush, overgrowth, and the trees line all seemed to get much rougher and thicker. I hunkered down behind a boulder that was to my left, and I stayed perfectly silent as I waited on Angie to find me. While I was waiting, I began hearing the sound of what sounded like somebody running towards me, but it sounded pretty far off, until it didn't. The sound kept getting closer and closer to me until the sound of a distinct snap right behind me drew my attention. I shouldn't have looked. I saw nothing at first as my eyes scanned over my surroundings, but when my eyes rose to look at the trees, all fell silent. No birds, no animals rustling in the leaves, not even as much as a single breeze of wind. The silence was absolutely deafening, and by this point my heart was beating so fast that the only thing that I could hear was that, and what I can only describe as my blood rushing through my body. About 300 yards off into the tree line, I made direct eye contact with the most horrifying creature that I have ever seen, and I have never seen anything like it since. It was hard to make out at first glance because it was blending so well into the trees. There was no mistaking what I saw. This creature had to stand at least 12 to 14 feet tall and was covered in what can only be described as either black cloaking or thick black fur. The head of it was skeletonized, with antlers protruding from the sides of its head. Its eyes were blood red and seemed to glow. The way it stood was simply unnatural by all accounts. I froze in fear, unable to move, but the sight and sound of my cousin running through the forest from my direct right-hand side of the creature snapped me back to reality. I tried to scream out for her to run back the way she came, but no words would come out of my mouth, no matter how hard I tried. She ran right up to me and asked me what was wrong, after scolding me from running away so far, but all I could do was point to where I was looking. She turned around and immediately grabbed a hold of me before she made a beeline out of those woods with me. She instructed me to snap my eyes shut as tightly as I could, and to never let go of her even for a moment. I could hear a guttural moaning and screaming from reverberating off the trees as we ran. I could hear the hastening of footsteps gaining on us. I blacked out somewhere in between that and us getting home, because the next thing I knew, I'd woken up tightly tucked in my bed with my cousin and father both standing over me, horrified looks. When I got up, all the doors had been bolted and padlocked, and all of our windows had been nailed closed and completely shuttered. Neither of them would speak a word to me about what happened. Angie denied ever having seen anything. My parents and I moved to Tennessee not long afterwards, and Angie stayed behind in West Virginia for a couple of years afterwards before moving out of the state for college. When my dad passed away in 2004, Angie wound up coming to the funeral and pulling me to the side after the service so we could chat. She finally admitted that she had seen that night. She explained to me that she had barely gotten out with her lives. My father had heard the screams and came running out of his tool shed and scared off whatever was in those woods with the sound of gunfire. Angie stated that she continued to feel as though she was being followed all the way up until she moved out of West Virginia, but she didn't elaborate any further. I'm still in contact with her today, but she refuses to speak to me on what she saw ever again. I don't know if what we saw in those woods that night was a windy boy, as they call it, or if it was some other malevolent force. But this experience rocked both of us to our core, and neither of us will step foot near those woods now. I'm lucky enough to live in a medium-sized city now, but even being this close to Appalachia keeps me on edge 24/7. There are things here that just never left. That was a windy boy, for sure. That sounds exactly like a windy boy. Oh my god, I'm so glad you got out. Oh. Well, we're going to end the story on that note. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and for being scared with me. I'm so glad I read this in the daytime, as I am also in Appalachia at the woods. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.